Decaffeinated is just sad, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what they mean.
Well, the light roast is too light for me. I need a stronger coffee. So I got decaf. Sad now.
That light roast is it's a bit like dishwater.
Well, I think it may not be making it stronger.
No. That's how my father makes his coffee. He has told us A, it's more coffee, but B, he puts one scoop in for about half a gallon. And it's just awful.
Yeah.
And he drinks it all day. He makes a big pot. He's got to have his own pot. My mother-in-law has to have a separate pot. She can't stand it. She likes it normal.
Yeah, no. So I put a little bit of regular, hoping it would help.
No. You know, they have complimentary coffee in the foyer.
Oh, is it decent?
It is decent. I've had a couple cups today. Yeah. They have it on from 7 a.m.
For 2:15? Okay. And I really just thought it because I was cold.
Where is everyone? That's all it matters.
That's right.
Yeah. 2 people.
That's what I like.
4 presenters and 2 people. Okay. Oh, here we go. 4 people. Bye.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, maybe wait 2 months.
I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear me within the speaker?
So they're not going to be able to hear you online without the speaker.
All right, is this better?
Yes, and if someone can't hear us online, they'll text me and I'll let you know.
Okay. I like moving around, so just bear with me. My name is Kenneth Branham. I'm the chief of the Bonnet Nation. That's our emblem there. And with me today, we're going to be talking about a business that we're trying to get off the ground. This is our first major showing of this to any group other than our own people. With me today is our tribal elder, Herb Hicks. I'm sorry, Herb, he's our oldest teenager. And he's in charge of economic development. Also with us is our travel administrator, Adrian Compton. And on Zoom will be Gray Oliver. He's the ones that him and Herb got together years and years ago and came up with the idea when we were talking about economic development. The Monacan tribe, we're the largest tribe in the state of Virginia. We have about 2,800 members. We got state recognized in 1989, and then we got federal recognition in 2018. We were one of the 6 tribes that got our federal recognition along with those. And the reason we did it with the other 6 was the cost of traveling, getting the people in line. And it was a lot of hard work for us. Virginia is not a state that embraced the native people very easily. So we had our work cut out when we started in the early 80s to get state and even, recognized. And then when federal came along, it was a little bit harder. We had to deal with the politicians. We had to tell them and teach them that, yes, there were Virginia Indians still living today. And, although 2 of the oldest reservations in this country are still in Virginia today, the Mattaponi and the Pamunkey still lives on those reservations. And when we first started, it was 8 tribes that were applying for federal recognition, but the Pamunkey and Mattaponi pulled out after the first session of Congress, which is the first 2 years. A session of Congress is when you introduce bills, and we were trying to go the route through the House and the Senate. And the reason we chose that route, myself and the other 7 chiefs at the time in 1996, I think it was, we went to Washington, D.C. Mike, I think his first name was Mike, and his last name was Glover, was in charge of the BIA. He was a native. And we asked him to be quite blunt with us. We wanted to know how long and what we needed to do to be federal recognized. And I'll never forget it. He took us in this big room. He called all the staff, and it was less than 20 people. It wasn't very impressive, that small number of people. But he said, this is who I work with. We work together to get federal recognized. Get you federal recognized. And he said, it will probably take you 20 plus years. And he looked at us, didn't blink a smile, and he said, none of you chiefs will be alive if you go through the Bureau. And that wasn't an option for any of us, really. We looked at each other, we listened, and he said, now, there are other ways of getting federal recognized, and I'm going to tell you this, and he had a little bit of a sense of humor. He said, I'm going to tell you this, but if you go over here and say I told you this, I'm going to tell them that you're lying. And he said, the reason I got to say that is because it's our job to federal recognize tribes through the BIA. And he said, now you can go through the president with the stroke of the pen, he could recognize all of you. Reagan done it with the Alaskan tribes when he was president. I think it was over 200 tribes at that time, stroke of the pen. And he said, you can go through the House and the Senate. And he said, both of them will be considerably less time than what you will if you go through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So we came out of that meeting with one thing in common. We're all saying, well, we have to do that route. And of course, that meant teaching the people in the federal government and state government who we were. In the textbooks, when I was in school, had about 2 pages about Virginia Indians, and they talked about Pocahontas and Chief Powhatan. And that was it. After that, we seemed to have disappeared. But we were still there, we were still alive, and we were still very much a part of the communities that we lived in. The road hasn't been easy to get to federal recognition, and I wasn't the chief when we received federal recognition. But in the last 28 years, I've been chief for about 20 of those, and I didn't run for 2 terms. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It would have been my 5th consecutive term. I didn't run. She died 2 years after that. Came up for the next 4 years. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with the same thing, and my wife was the sole caregiver, and she needed my help just like my sister did, so I didn't run again. And then in 2018, we got federal recognition. I had gone back on the council at that time, and a couple people asked me to run for chief in 2019, and I did, and was here I am. And my term runs out in June of 23. I can't tell you whether I'll run again or not right now. It's been an experience, to say the least. But enough about that. We have done so much since we got federal recognized. In front of you, you each have a little magazine saying 20 ways we have helped strengthen our tribal nation in the 4 years since federal recognition. A lot of that came about in the last 4 years, but we've been working on it, some of them for many years, forming relationships, friendships, with the senators, the governors, our local politicians. And, I tell anybody that's trying to get federal recognized, you got to have those people, and you got to have them on your side. So, don't burn your bridges behind you, because those are the same people that will vote whether you get state recognized or federal. But the most amazing part about these 60 things were we did them all during the epidemic years. 2 years, we couldn't meet half the time, but we worked together with our tribal council. We did have a few meetings with our people. They gave us authority to do things. And we now have a brand new complex that we're staying in. And, we've recently bought 1,300 acres of land. And, so we've done a lot of things, even though times weren't easy for us. But I'm going to turn this over to Herb. Next thing. I'm supposed to be talking about history, and this is a map. John Smith drew this in 1608. We did make contact with them then. We were the most western tribe in the state of Virginia. To be honest with you, when I was in school, I thought we were the only Indians in Virginia. We had almost no contact with the tribes on the coast, and the other 7 recognized tribes on the coastal part of Virginia. And I had no idea, because it wasn't taught. Up here, that's the pride of the Monacan Nation. It's on next to our tribal office. Over there, the white building is the church. And if you notice, it's on a rock. And, it says in the Bible, build your foundations on stone, and that stone goes all the way over. There's a little creek there up to there. And we got schoolhouse behind the log cabin. I went there up until 1962. We weren't allowed in public schools in Amherst County until 1962. And once you went through the 7th grade, you got a job. And most of the jobs in that time was very manual, worked in the apple orchards. And this here is one of the fields close to our center. We call that Bear Mountain right there. And that tribal center is down past these trees and around the corner. And we have a homecoming every year. If you're in Virginia in October, first Saturday in October, you're welcome to come. This shows you a map of different areas of Virginia. Different colors represent different areas, but you see King Williams County, Hampton, Chesapeake, that's where the other tribes of Virginia are located. Here we are right here, way away from everybody else. And that's a blessing in a way because we had to do our own thing. And, you know, once we found out there were other Indians in Virginia, we started communicating with them, and we're good friends with all of them now. I know all the chiefs, and they know me, and they know most of the people doing the presentation. But I'm gonna turn it over to Herb Hicks and let him talk about some of the things we have done.
And before Herb starts, I just wanted to say something. We are the Ashland represent the Chickahominy. tribe.
Oh, okay, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But the story that Chief Braden talks about when I was a little girl, our chief at the time said, we believe there's Indians in another part of the state and you all. And so that story my mom always tells.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So very interesting.
so you kind of felt the same way. We were over there, but you didn't know about us.
They were so excited.
Yeah. And, you know, their chief, Steve, and I are real good friends. And in fact, we have a Monacan working for them that lived in the area. So he's my nephew, by the way, Rufus. Herb, if you'll take over.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll get over there. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm trying to think about what I want to start off with, but I'll give you a little bit of my background. I went to that same school before the chief did, no. Then I stuck around Virginia until I was 19 years old. I joined the Marine Corps and spent 22 years in the Marine Corps and retired. And I got into the golf business, became a PGA golf professional. And I was mostly in Carolina. And the reason I was coming through Virginia and was on the way trying to find another job. That was 1993. And I stayed around there for a month and a half, and then it became 2 years. And my wife is a Monacan and she didn't want to leave Virginia. So here I am. But anyway, I took a leave of absence. I'm still a PGA professional. I took a leave of absence from my job about 2 years ago when COVID started. I was an independent agent, so I could do that. But let's get into the meat of the stuff. It all started with an idea. The gentleman that you see on that screen up there, him and I got together, God, I guess we've been knowing each other 15 years. And so we got together and he came into our tribe. The way I met him, he came into the tribe from one of the Monicans wanted him to come there because he worked for Procter and Gamble, and I think that he was a motivational speaker and problem solver. And so we got everybody that would come get in that clubhouse, not clubhouse, I'm thinking golf, tribal hall. And we got the people to tell us, Gray led us through this process. And everybody had a say of what they wanted to see for the future of the Monacan tribe. And believe it or not, it was young ones and old ones in there. And a lot of this stuff that we've done, and if you could go follow the trail, you'll see that this is where it's all started. First, 2007, we started the heat and air conditioning business. Ended up opening a small store. And we were doing good with the heat and air business, but the store started to losing money, so we got caught up in that. So the next thing that we were looking at was we got with the SBA and we were starting 8A. We started a SBA application to get the 8A designation with the heat and air conditioning business. We sent it in and they sent it back and it was marked up because it was a lot of stuff that we didn't have the ability to do. So further on down the line, we got tied up with another company there. It didn't work out either. 2013, we started the Monica and Indian Nation Enterprises. And we worked a little bit with that. And then in 2018, we got federal recognition and we were able to I feel bad about saying this, but the COVID really put us with the means to go where we wanted to go from back here in 2007. And we're getting there. But, you know, I feel bad about the people that gotten the COVID. But anyway, the federal recognition, you all know about the CARES money and that. Well, we were able to start do some federal programs, which we're still using thanks to Adrian Compton. Then back here, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, 2020, Gray and I got together. We did talked about a project in healthcare. And we ended up with the Daily Touch, which Greg will be on here and talk to you about. But right now, we're looking at our clinic building is going up as we speak with some holdups. And we got eventually, when that clinic is built, we could go in there and cherry pick some of those departments in that clinic. So, Gray, you go ahead and start with your presentation. And I think it'll all come together once he finishes up. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm assuming you guys can hear me.
We can hear you.
Oh, very good. Very good. My name is Gray Oliver. I'm coming to you live from Lake Toxaway, North Carolina. So, which I think is somewhere between the Monica Nation and the Cherokee Nation. I want to say a couple of things before we get into the discussion of Daily Touch. First is that it has been one of the great honors of my life to know and to work with the Monica Nation, especially on this historic initiative that's being led by the chief and Herb and Adrian and the entire Monacan Tribal Council. When Preston introduced us, as Herb said, gosh, going on nearly 2 centuries ago, I certainly had no idea about the history of the Monacan Nation, or that we'd be able to harness our creative powers to bring significant wellness at home initiatives and improve the quality of life for all the nation members. So I hope at the end of this discussion, it starts you all thinking, and we stand ready to help you in any way we can. I also believe that the Native American Wellness at Home Initiative, as we call it, and there are several components of it, Monacan Daily Touch being the first one, is the single biggest opportunity that the federal government has to provide the right resources and technology in ensuring the overall health of America's Native American populations, regardless of where they live. And that was critical for us. So, and as Herb said, it's a long way from idea to initiative. And we're happy today to show you something that's up and functional and operational, and now moving from operational to an expansion phase. So let me tell you a little bit about how we got here. My background is consumer goods. I'm a Tide salesman. Hopefully you all use Tide detergents. I'm an ex-Procter and Gamble executive. And when I sat down with the Monacan Nation, we made a laundry list, literally, of initiatives we would like to go after. Coincidentally, probably 8 or so years ago, I found myself not in the consumer products business, but in the healthcare space. And it was at that point that Herb and I sat down and began to talk about ways that we could impact the health and wellness of the Monacan Nation. I started working with those guys well before they were recognized. It was a tremendous congratulations to their effort. I was a witness to it all. And they never stopped believing. And thankfully, our government, federal, did the right thing for the nation. And so what I want to focus on today is the Wellness at Home Initiative, is what we call that, and specifically Daily Touch. What you see here is the result of about, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 years of us noodling around. There were probably 10 different operational systems that we looked at that would provide us with vital measurement out of the home. And let me define what that is. If you're looking at the front of the room there, you see 2 separate systems. Each of those systems, and you can ask the chief to do that. He was our first client. Maybe you can do that off camera, Chief. But each of those devices is designed to measure a primary vital. And in about 3 to 5 minutes, an individual can take all of those primary vitals. That wasn't really the most special aspect of this. What really made it the bell go off in my head was when I ran into a group of folks who had perfected a transmission device that enabled that to happen in the home, regardless of where the home was. And then that home would be, that information on that client would be transmitted to their back end, where it would be charted and recorded and kept. That was critical for us, because when Herb and the chief saw that, Adrian, I don't think, was in the boat yet, but when he saw that, he said, okay, so wait a minute, hold on a second. So if I've got members across 6 different states, we could deploy this, and it doesn't respect geographic boundaries. And the answer to that is yes, it does not. The objective here was to provide a easy to use, designed to need device that would be effective no matter where the nation member was. So that's what you see here. The Daily Touch device has a blood pressure, a pulse ox, it has a scale, it has glucometer, and there are other devices that are being qualified for this. And effectively, and again, ask the chief on break to verify this for you, so you know I'm not making it up. But it'll take 2 to 3 minutes where during his day that he stops his day, and then he puts it on his finger, does his blood pressure, does pulse ox, and then that transmits to our main headquarter, where that is then charted. That was the first element of that. How is it that we would create a wellness in the home presence so that it would be easy to use for the patient? The second piece for us was it was designed to need. That meant that, as you all know from your Native American populations, they all have very different health issues. They could be heart, they could be respiratory, they could be cardio, they could be diabetic, or any range or combination of those. So what this device does, it was able to tailor to the specific need of that particular client. So once we got the information out, it was, okay, now how do we make it accessible? And that was the second piece of it. So that this information is now accessible via the internet and via modern technology, iPhones and computers, so that the medical resources that need to see it can access it. The second step for Daily Touch was to then get that to daily medical professionals, registered nurses, and our partner, Robin Wandrick, who sadly I don't think could get with us today just because she's got a lot going on. But she's a registered nurse, but more importantly, she was a former chief executive of a home care agency. And she was also a chief executive of a rest care home, and also managed an in-home nursing service. So with her as the CEO of Daily Touch, we brought all the elements of that together and said, how is it that we do this at home without a normal disruption of life for a lot of folks? Once we said, okay, here are those 6 words: designed to need and ease of use. Then we went off to try and look at different devices. As you can imagine, America's born on innovation and invention. We spent a lot of time trying to source the right devices and the right combination of those devices and the systems behind it. We looked at probably over 10 different systems, deployed at least 5 to the field, and we landed on the 2 that were the most effective, keyword, most effective for early adoption by the Monica Nation members. AMC is one of the companies and Stell is the other. And these folks are out in front. They understand the issue, and they were very forward leaning and trying to make sure we got what we need. So this diagram that you've got up shows you an example. What happens? We'll use the chief as an example. He gets up in the morning. He may do it before he eats. He does it after, doesn't matter. He sits down, he takes these devices, he goes through a 2 to 3 minute health check, and that immediately transmits to our headquarter point. We have nurses at the headquarter point who then oversight the folks who are on the system. So the device was the first key element, but the real soft tissue that keeps it connected and keeps it operational is the trusted nurse advisor role. And that was where Robin, as I said, the home care and hospital CEO came into the mix, because the device is one thing, but trying to connect the nurse and the oversight. Now, what does that nurse do? That nurse basically opens the file every day and reviews it. So if she looks at the chief's file and he looks great, then she goes on to the next file. If he looks at the file, if she looks at the file, or he, and there's been a deviation significantly on any of these measured areas, she probably wouldn't do it after one day, but unless it's a very a big change day over day. But they look for a trend, as with anything in health, and then at the point of requiring action, they take action to call the individual and say, "Hey, what's going on? What did you do? What has changed? Because one of your primary measurements is out of whack." So when you look at it from our perspective, there were 2 pieces to it: the element of deploying the devices and modifying the behavior for the individual so we could get a vital measurement. And the second element was the transponder, that actual device that wires it to our group. Now, once we got the information, the real aha was when we got into that trusted nurse advisor relationship role. And what's important about that role is and we kind of knew it because Robin, one of our partners on this, was in the home care business. And when you enter the home, it's truly sacred space for any of us that are taking care of an elder or are in the home care business. It is truly sacred space. And so to do that and do that effectively, there's a very specific learning that's associated with that. And candidly, it took us 3 to 4 years just to figure that out. Trying to make sure that you allayed any concerns, that the information was going anywhere, that it's certainly protected. It's all HIPAA compliant. And the other thing was trying to make sure and get everyone else used to what was going on in that process. So our focus was wellness at home, and Monica Daily Touch was the first way for us to go out and get that. If you think about Monica Daily Touch and the system itself, and what does it help members do? First and foremost, we found that it helps them understand their daily actions and how those actions will affect their long-term health benefit. Now that sounds like stating the obvious, but it's a fact. I mean, we all do kind of things. We all eat too much ice cream, a couple of nights a week. But this did really ground them in a daily recognition that they were going to be sending off vitals, and that somebody else was going to see it. I say that kind of humorously because my father was one of the first folks that he has a heart problem and has had heart surgery, and he was one of the first folks we put on it, and almost immediately the next day he was exercising. He said, and I called him, I said, and he changed a couple of things that he needed to change. And I asked him, what's going on? He said, well, yeah, I mean, I know the nurse is looking at me, so I want to look good, and so it was kind of funny, but it's funny how if people understand they're being not watched or observed, that's the wrong term, but that they are going to self-measure themselves in certain areas, it does and can have a positive long-term effect. The second thing is that the daily measurement system provided key indicators that helped us prevent adverse health events, and in many instances averted catastrophic, life-threatening events. And that cannot be understated. We had several examples of where our nurses caught significant changes in blood pressure and pulse rates that eventually, had they not gone undetected, would have led to a stroke or a heart attack. Now, there are two ways to think about any type of a catastrophic event. First is that it's from a loved one standpoint. You have a catastrophic event like that, you're at risk of going away from here. The second piece, from my perspective, because I've spent the last 5 to 7 years in the healthcare business, is the understanding of the expenses and the cost to society of a catastrophic event. So in other words, if somebody has a heart attack, if it could have been averted, number one, you don't have to go through the surgery, just as my father did, go through the surgery, go through 6 months of recovery. But guess what? You also just saved about $200,000 in Medicare costs associated with that surgery. So the benefits of Daily Touch are extensive, and as you'll talk, on a break, ask the chief. The last thing is that we found that the wellness at home approach provided the key data that was required for the entire medical support system. So what that means is the chief has the ability to connect his primary physician if he goes to a specialist. If he goes to a nutritionalist, he has the ability to connect those medical resources that support his wellness today in through this data and share that data with him, with them, should he choose to do it at his direction. So this was kind of a comprehensive way for us to not only do it in a very brief way, but also do it expansively in that the information would be available to all the resources that might need it. Adrian, what's the next slide you have there?
It's me now.
Okay, all right, good. So any do you think that Adrian and Chief and Herbert, is there anything that I've left off there, or do you well, let me say this. When we sat down and with the Monacan team and really identified of all of the initiatives that we needed to start with, this one it kind of came to the top of the list. Simply because of the points that I laid out there, the long-term value of the initiative, and there's no greater gift that we have, all of us, than health. And specific to the Monacans, they have been a community that has been discriminated against in this area, and so it made a world of sense for us to move this very quickly on the fastest possible timing that we could, to get it to as many folks as we could. At this point, we are seasoned, which I will call my definition of seasoned in our lead market is about 6 months, 6 to 12 months, really, is some of the deployment that we've got on these two systems. And we're now right at the point of kind of flipping the switch to move to the balance of to expand it out to the total nation as those folks would need it. And estimates, Herb, Adrian, feel free, Chief, but the odds are we think there's somewhere between 350 and maybe 400 folks that could see a significant benefit with from the wellness at home, specifically Monacan Daily Touch.
Thank you, Gray. I'm going to talk about a couple pieces that we have here and kind of hold them up so people can see what they can get. And, you see some of the things here. The vital transmission unit, this is right here. This is what you plug into the wall. And this is what sends the message to the nurse or whoever's having the major, I guess, recording part of it. And they will be able to look at everything. Of course, everybody recognize the blood pressure thing here. If you got high blood pressure, you probably got one in your house. What you do, it'll show here and you push that saying that you're doing your blood pressure. You wrap it around your arm, you do it, and it will say when it's done transmitting the information to the main center where the nurse will be able to look at it when she wants to. She don't need to be there. It will be recorded. And of course, this here, you put on your finger for your pulse, that works the same way. Of course, if you got diabetes like I do, you know what these are, little stickers, the pain getters, strips. And of course, the last thing here is temperature. And of course, that would have came in handy if you had it in your home. And still today, with COVID-19, you need to take your test regular. I mean, your temperature, you can do that with that. And of course, a a lot of you women's favorite thing, the scales. My wife won't get on it while I'm around because it will say your weight is and tell you what it is. But, you know, all of these things is part of it. But, you know, let's say that you're not a diabetic. You could get this and not have that. You wouldn't have to do that. And I do all of them, although I'm only a diabetic. I don't have high blood pressure or, you know, anything else. But I use all of them because I was one of the test people, and I think it will definitely save lives. The Chickahominy people, you got people going out to these families. Well, y'all could switch to this and you could cut down on some of that expense. You wouldn't have to send a doctor there. And we have had a lady too that had basically the same thing Gray's father had, heart problems, and she changed her medication. And she was feeling bad, but you know, like most of us, you don't go to a doctor just because you're feeling bad. But she did the thing. The nurse saw it, called her up and asked her what was wrong. And she said, well, I had my medicine changed. She said, well, you need to go see your doctor today. And she did. And the doctor said if she hadn't came in, that she might have had a stroke. And that was our assistant chief. So, and okay, well, I'm gonna let Adrian, I can talk all day, folks, as you probably figured that out by now. So I'm gonna let Adrian is our travel administrator. And, you know, he's the guy behind the figures and things, and he's going to talk about our clinic that's being built at this moment.
All right. Now, part of the business plan that we put together included a clinic. Now, at the time, it was a dream. This is about 3 years ago. And it was prior to CARES and prior to the CARES Act and the ARPA Act. Anyway, we did a list of things. It was Gray, myself, Chief Branham and Herb, and we spent a couple of days just writing up what we wanted to do. And this clinic now is starting to be built. We've broken ground. It's actually expanded. This future expansion here is now happening. It's 13,000 square feet. It's costing about 13 million. It's going to have dentistry, behavioral health, primary care, family care, addiction health. We've been talking to a doctor called, or dentist, yes, Chief. We'll also be talking to Dr. Peter Coleman of the Coleman Institute. He until recently ran and owned 13 addiction centers across the country. He's based in Richmond. He reached out to us. He would like to be involved, and we've met with him and spent some time with him, and we're in regular contact. So these dreams are starting to happen. We're setting up a home healthcare business as well. We're doing that with Gray, as you see up in the corner. Gray used to own Paradise Home Care. He sold a few years ago, he and his partner. And however, we're setting it up in our district. There's a lot of demand for home health care, especially amongst the tribe with our aging population. We have about 300 elders. We are also, this is right beside, I'll just point out before we go to the next slide, this is right beside our building. This is where we're housed here. So as you can see, this is our offices. And this goes into our campus. We have about 6 acres in Madison Heights, which is really the northern suburbs of Lynchburg. I'll get you to go next slide, please, Emma. Thank you. And this is our senior centre or elder centre. Now, with all the expansion, we decided that actually Herb decided we were getting an elder centre. So here it is. I originally wanted to do a warehouse because I I had in my mind that I wanted to do medical distribution, something I'd done before in Australia. And but Herb said no, no, no. So here's the elder centre. That's a 5,700 square foot building. Internally, that's it as of yesterday. John, who's up in the back of the room with Joni, he's managing that project. John is a Monacan and on our tribal council. And all we really have to do is put on the deck and the paving, and we'll be opening up. Now we have the sewage we've got the sewage all completed now, the electrical, with very minor stuff to do. So hopefully in the next month or so. And the additional offices, well, that's to make room for our expansion. We're currently sharing 2 or 3 people to every office in our main building. And we ran out of room a long time ago. We thought we'd have room for at least 3 or 4 years, but we ran out of room basically within 12 months with the expansion. So we, instead of doing what other tribes have done, we put our money, everybody spends their money differently depending on their needs. We decided the best way to spend our money, or the majority of our funds, was on infrastructure, something that would be there for a long time after we're all gone. And the additional offices, there's 13 offices between those 2 buildings. The right-hand side of the senior centre is offices. The rest is the senior centre. It's got a kitchen, a main breakout area for arts and craft, games. It's got a computer area, a computer nook as well. It's got a gymnasium, a TV rec room, and some nurses' quarters. And if you go over here, you'll see that's red fencing. That's a silk fence. That's where the tribal clinic is. There's a ramp straight off here, and the clinic will be about 50 yards when it's finished. So we've all thought it out quite carefully. There's been a few iterations, but it's all come together. Hasn't been too many hiccups. Our biggest problem has been actually probably the county, dealing with the county, just getting building approvals and getting everything put in place. Next slide, please, Emma. And that's our offices as of this morning. So you can see the site where the clinic is, and that's where we are all housed. There will be also additional parking. We'll have 98 parks by the time we're finished, additional parks. So that'll give us around 125 parks on the premises, which that includes the clinic plus the elder centre. The elder centre also, it's all part of the plan with daily touch and also just providing medical services to our elders. So we've all centred the whole, we weren't given the opportunity to do gambling because of the Thomasine and Jordan Act, which was our Federal Recognition Act. So we had to take a different route to economic development. So healthcare it is. And our plan is, once the clinic is built, is that we will start cherry picking the most profitable businesses, I'll be honest, and the least amount of administrative work, and under a 638 for tribal development. The Upper Mattapan, I've done that. They've done an excellent job, but we will be hopefully following in their footsteps as well. Anyway, that's all I have. Anything else? Any questions, I should say? No? All right. Well, thank you very much. Oh, yes. Yeah, you do. You do. Although these do have SIM cards, so you can. Part of the problem, slight problem we've had in certain very remote homes, because Amherst County and our surrounding counties are not very well serviced by cellular or fibre optics, but that is changing. We've been successful on a couple of grants in helping change that, and we're actually now running fibre optics past every Monacan home
in the district. So rural or not. All right. Any other questions?
If there's no other questions, we have gifts for you guys. We really appreciate you coming and sharing about your program and all the work that you're doing. So one more round of applause.